Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, a podcast about garden history and literature. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and today is November 5th. Well, with the onslaught of November, it's time to bring in the last batch of cut flowers for arranging. Today we hear from Catherine White's Onward and Upward in the Garden about the pleasures and perils of flower arranging. Catherine writes, "Like almost every housewife, I keep a bowl of flowers on the dining table, or at least an assortment of my own homegrown, hand-polished gourds, or a flowering houseplant. The silver tankard in the dining room corner cupboard has its few roses in season, and the enclosed north porch, where we eat in summer, must have its small bowl of garden flowers or fall berries or whatever comes along. It is the living room I spend the most time on, for here there are always a pair of small arrangements in small pottery vases on the mantelpiece, flanking an oval family portrait. I always place a semi-miniature vase in a small niche in one bookcase, which makes a pleasing shallow recess that nicely frames a 3-inch or a 4-inch vase of small flowers like violas or violets, little wild tulips and daffodils. As summer comes on, I fill the biggest copper jar with decorative flowers, snapdragons, zinnias, sunflowers, huge African marigolds, larkspur, and chrysanthemums. I use a minimum of pin holders and devices for supporting flowers and have no chicken wire or florist sponge for props. I follow no rules. To sum it up, I am an indefatigable but careless and hasty arranger. It's a vice, all right, as Ogden Nash so perfectly expounded some years ago in his poem, The Solitude of Mr. Powers. Once there was a lonely man named Mr. Powers. He was lonely because his wife fixed flowers. Mr. Powers was a gallant husband, but whenever he wished to demonstrate his gallantry, his beloved was always out with 6 vases and a bunch of something or other in the pantry. He got no conversation while they ate, because she was always nipping dead blossoms off the centerpiece and piling them on her plate. Finally, he said, "Hey, I might as well be alone with myself as alone with a lot of vases that have to have their water replenished every day." And he walked off into the dawn, and his wife just kept on refilling vases and never noticed that he was gone. Beware of floral arrangements. They lead to marital estrangements. Catherine finishes her essay with these words, "My own Mr. Powers is long-suffering, since he has a perpetual case of pollinosis, as well as a flower arranger to contend with. If he walks off into the dawn some fine morning, I shall know what and whom to blame." Very sweet. And of course, her husband was E.B. White, the man who wrote Charlotte's Web and Stuart Little. They were truly in love. Well, I thought today I would also share a reading from Richardson Wright's The Gardener's Bedtime Book, which offers to gardeners short and long pieces to be read in bed by those who love green growing things. This book was first published in 1929, and it is a much beloved gardener's classic book. Now, this book is laid out in a day-by-day format, and each day there are just little snippets that you can read about gardening. Today's snippet for November 5th is regarding everlastings, or dried flowers. Except for honesty, Lunaria biennis. Very few of the everlastings appeal to me in winter. In late fall, after the garden has gone, a few bouquets of them for a time are refreshing to have about. But my prejudice against everlastings is that they are everlasting. One soon tires of them. They collect all the stray dust that comes their way. I'd prefer an occasional vase of flowers from a florist in winter to a dozen mangy, grimy, dried bouquets of the best helichrysums ever raised. And even honesty, by the first of the year, goes into the fireplace. Its silver shillings are too annoyingly reminiscent by that time of my lack of them. And then he always ends each snippet with a little piece of advice. For today, he says, all shrubs and trees set out now should have the soil well firmed around their roots and be staked where necessary. A little gem for today from Richardson Wright and his Gardener's Bed Book. And here's a reminder from yesterday's show. Of course, today is Election Day, which is also the gardener's deadline for planting spring bulbs. But of course, that is merely a suggestion. To me, the best time to plant spring bulbs is when you finally get a second to yourself and have a shovel in your hand and have the energy to use it. We get to it when we get to it. It's time for today's botanical history. It was on this day, November 5th, in 1801, that America lost one of its pioneering botanists, Humphry Marshall. His legacy as the father of American dendrology continues to influence our understanding of native trees and shrubs more than 2 centuries later. Born into a Quaker family in Marshalltown, Pennsylvania, Marshall's journey into botany began through his connection to his famous cousin, John Bartram, known as the father of American botany. In 1773, Marshall established what would become America's second botanical garden, following in the footsteps of his cousin John Bartram. This garden, created after inheriting his family estate, became a living laboratory where native and exotic plants thrived side by side. Marshall's friendship with the British botanist John Fothergill proved pivotal in his career. Fothergill not only compensated Marshall for his plant collecting efforts, but also introduced him to Europe's botanical elite. But perhaps one of Marshall's most forward-thinking contributions was his repeated suggestion in 1778, in 1785, and then again in 1792 for a Western exploration expedition, a vision that predated Lewis and Clark's famous journey by 25 years. This concept demonstrates Marshall's understanding of the vast botanical wealth just waiting to be discovered in America's unexplored territories. In 1785, Marshall published Arbustum Americanum, the first American essay focused entirely on trees and shrubs. The title was mocked by English botanists for Marshall's famous misspelling of arbustum in the title. Marshall added an R to the word arbustum, and so the title became Arbustrum Americanum, I'm sure to his great dismay. But still, this groundbreaking work earned Marshall recognition as the father of American dendrology. And just to refresh your memory, dendrology is primarily concerned with the taxonomy of woody species, like trees and shrubs. Marshall's masterpiece established a foundation for the study of woody plants in North America. Today, Marshall's influence lives on through the genus Marshallia, named in his honor, and in Marshalltown, Pennsylvania, which bears his name. The plant explorer Joseph Trumbull Rothrock once beautifully expressed, Marshall saw beauty in every aspect of nature. Of Marshall, he once wrote, "The earth abounds in beauty, all of which is open to his chastened senses. He revels in the sunlight and the breezes. The songs of the birds fall welcome into his ear. The colors of the flowers attract him." And today we celebrate the birthday of Ellen Biddle Shipman, who was born on this day, November 5th, in 1869. Ellen was a woman who found her voice in the whispers of flowers and her strength in the structure of garden walls. Ellen revolutionized American garden design and shattered glass ceilings in landscape architecture. Her story is one of resilience, artistry, and the profound belief that beauty could heal the human spirit. She once confided to the New York Times, "Before women took hold of the profession, landscape architects were doing what I call cemetery work." Instead, Ellen envisioned gardens as she envisioned life itself, full of vitality, movement, and the endless possibility of renewal. She said, "I prefer to look on my work as if I were painting pictures as an artist." And paint she did, with delphinium blues, peony pinks, and the silver-green whispers of herbs. Ellen's childhood was spent in the wild beauty of the American frontier, where her father's military career took their family from the dusty horizons of Arizona to the vast skies of Texas. But it was in her grandmother's garden where Ellen first learned the language of flowers, a vocabulary that would later help her create some of America's most enchanting spaces. Those early lessons among the blooms would shape her entire life's work. When life dealt her an unexpected hand, divorce at a time when such things weren't spoken of in polite society, Ellen didn't wither. Instead, like the perennials she would later champion, she found the strength to bloom again. With 3 children to support and only her natural talent to rely on, she transformed necessity into artistry. She would later teach, "Remember that the design of your place is its skeleton, upon which you will plant to make your picture. Keep that skeleton as simple as possible." This was advice born from her own experience of rebuilding life from its essential framework. Over her remarkable career, Ellen would create over 600 gardens, each one a sanctuary of beauty and peace. But perhaps her most revolutionary act was creating a sanctuary of another kind, an all-female practice in New York City, where women could grow and flourish in a profession that had long excluded them. Under her nurturing guidance, countless women found their own paths in landscape architecture. One of the highlights of Ellen's career was when House and Garden magazine crowned her the Dean of Women Landscape Architects in 1933, recognizing her role in transforming both gardens and opportunities for women in the field. And she worked with some of America's most prominent families, including the Fords, the Edisons, and the DuPonts, and yet maintained that gardens should be accessible to all. And by the way, in today's show notes, I link to my blog post on Ellen Shipman, and what you'll notice there, are color slides from Frances Benjamin Johnston of so many of Ellen's masterpieces, all of these gardens that she put together. There are so few of them that were captured, but most of these images truly capture the magic of what Ellen was trying to create. And then in addition to that, I managed to colorize and enhance most of the known pictures of Ellen Shipman. So if you'd like to see her in full color, you can do that over on the website. All you need to do is click on the link in today's show notes, and you'll get to see all of these wonderful images of Ellen and her gardens. Well, from the majestic terraces of the Sarah P. Duke Gardens to the intimate corners of so many private estates, Ellen created spaces that spoke to the soul. She understood that a garden was more than just a collection of plants. It was a place where memories took root and dreams could flower. And her designs gave people not just gardens, but places where they could find themselves. And that is why she was so much in demand. People loved her work. Today, while many of her gardens have faded into history, those that remain continue to tell Ellen's story. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Garden Favorites by Warren Schultz, Rebecca Atwater, and Rick Dark. This book came out in 2002. It's already 22 years old. I can't believe that. And the subtitle is Designing with Herbs, Climbers, Roses, and Grasses. Well, there's something infinitely comforting about this book, like sitting down with an old friend who also happens to be a master gardener. This book's trio of authors, all seasoned American garden writers, created what feels like an intimate conversation about the plants we love most, showing us new ways to appreciate and use these garden stalwarts. The publisher wrote, "A border of lavender, a garden wall draped in wisteria, a bush of sweet-scented roses, a patch of fountain grass. No matter what style of garden you prefer, classic plants such as these are naturally included. Whether you garden in a large yard or in a window box, Garden Favorites will help you discover fresh ideas that you can use in your own favorite garden." Well, what I love about this book is the herb section, where the cottage style and the parterre style are featured beautifully. Vines are also showcased to imaginative delight, bringing much needed attention to climbers and clingers in today's ornamental gardens. If you struggle with an ornamental garden, this visual feast, paired with expert insights and plant recommendations, is an excellent place to start. The authors write about classic plants and plant pairings that add instant charm and interest. Think of all the basics: fragrant thyme on walkways, sweet peas climbing an inviting trellis, and of course, roses to add a royal touch. This book is full of inspiring images. It's not too wordy, and it's the perfect amount of guidance. Now, what makes this book special is its ability to bridge the gap between traditional gardening wisdom and contemporary design. Rick Dark, the renowned curator of plants at Longwood Gardens, contributed his expertise on ornamental grasses, which adds depth and a modern twist. The book is organized into 4 main sections: herb gardens, from traditional designs to modern landscapes, then vines and climbers, including problem-solving solutions and seasonal options, then rose gardens, exploring everything from climbing roses to companion planting, and then finally, ornamental grasses, showcasing their unique beauty in various settings. This book is 288 pages of classic plant wisdom reimagined for modern gardens. You can get a copy of Garden Favorites by Warren Schultz, Rebecca Atwater, and Rick Dark, and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $3. And that's one of the reasons why I picked this book for you, because it is so affordable. So if you are looking for oldies but goodies that won't break the bank, add Garden Favorites to your list. All right, we end today's show with one of my favorites. It was on this day, November 5th, in 1857, that Ida Tarbell was born. A woman who would not only become known for exposing Standard Oil's monopolistic practices, but who also found her greatest peace tending to her beloved Connecticut farm. She named it Twin Oaks, and it became not just her home, but a sanctuary where the hard-hitting journalist could tend to gentler pursuits. While history remembers Ida Tarbell as America's first investigative journalist, the Garden would know her as something else entirely, a devoted steward of the soil. In 1906, after years of hard-hitting journalism, Tarbell purchased a 40-acre abandoned farm in Easton, Connecticut, and she recalled the moment fondly. I wanted something of my own, and at last, by a series of circumstances purely fortuitous, I acquired 40 acres and a little house in Connecticut. I had meant to let the land and the house run to seed if they wanted to. I had no stomach or money for a place. I wanted something of my very own, with no cares. Idle dream in a world busy in adding artificial cares to the load nature lays on our shoulders. Well, the land had other ideas and called to her in ways that her previous life never had. Ida wrote, "Fields calling to be rid of underbrush and weeds and turned to their proper work. A garden spot calling for a chance to show what it could do. Apple trees begging to be trimmed and sprayed. I had bought an abandoned farm, and it cried loud to go about its business." This woman, who had taken on the Standard Oil Corporation and earned the title of muckraker from President Theodore Roosevelt, found herself surrendering to the gentle demands of her garden. She wrote, "Why should I not answer the cry? Why should I not be a farmer?" Before I knew it, I was at least going through the motions, having fields plowed, putting in crops, planting an orchard, supporting horses, a cow, a pig, a poultry yard, giving up a new evening gown to buy fertilizer. Ida Tarbell's enthusiasm for growing things became infectious. By 1915, she was telling Country Life in America magazine, "When the first seed catalog comes in spring, I give myself up to picking and choosing. Seeds are the most profitable investment I know." Ida Tarbell's garden flourished alongside her writing career. From her first-floor office at Twin Oaks, she continued her work while tending to her Jersey cow named Esther Ann, her mare named Minerva, who was named after her own middle name, and even a pig named Juicy. Tarbell even hosted legendary autumn feasts where 60 of her friends and neighbors gathered to enjoy the bounty of her land: roasted pig, potatoes, squash, and pies made from the apples grown in her orchard. Well, in time, Twin Oaks became more than just a farm. It became the heart of Ida Tarbell's family life. Ida recalled, Here I was, 63. My little home in Connecticut had not only grown increasingly dear to me, it had also taken on an importance I had not foreseen. It had become the family home. Here my mother had come to pass the last summers before her death in 1917. Here my niece Esther had been married under the oaks. Here my niece Clara and her husband Tristram Tepper, battered by war service, had come in 1919 to live in our little guest house. Here their 2 children passed their first years. 100 associations gave the place a meaning and a dignity which I had never expected to feel, something that only comes when a place has been hallowed by the joys and the sorrows of family life. After helping Dr. J.P. Mahaffey of the University of Dublin, the two struck up a friendship. She recalled, "Our acquaintance grew out of our mutual interest in the flora of any spot we happened to be. One day, as I came in from a botanizing expedition carrying stocks of the lovely field lilies, Dr. Mahaffey seized my arm and said, 'You care for flowers and plants? I thought American women had no interest in them.' In defense of my sisterhood, I went diligently to work to show him our summer flora. But he cared for nothing as much as our summer lilies, and begged me, after the flowering was over, to send him bulbs, which I proudly did. In exchange, I received from his Dublin garden seeds of a white poppy, which he had originally gathered in the shadow of the statue of Memnon in Egypt. Those poppies have always gone with me. They flourished in my mother's garden in Titusville, and now they flourish in my Connecticut garden." Well, today, Twin Oaks stands as a National Historic Landmark, a testament to a remarkable woman who found that the greatest stories sometimes grow right in our own backyards. Ultimately, it was quite poetic that the woman who had exposed the mightiest corporation of her time discovered that the simple acts of tending a garden and nurturing the land could bring rewards that no investigation could uncover. Well, that's it for today's show. As November's early darkness settles around us, we've spent a beautiful day in the Garden of History. We began with Catherine White's timeless wisdom about flower arranging, and we ended with Ida Tarbell's beloved Twin Oaks farm, where she found peace among her apple trees and vegetable beds. Each of these stories weaves together to create a tapestry of American garden history, from Marshall's early botanical explorations to Ellen Shipman's elegant designs. All of these stories remind us that gardens are not just places where we grow plants, but spaces where we grow as people. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.